Hey folks, welcome to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey, right here on the Dice Tower. We're going to be taking a look at this little fella right here, Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard from 25th Century Games, and it's a cooperative trick-taking game. Let's get down to the table and check it out. So here I have the game set up for you, and of course you're not going to be playing with your hands open so that everybody can see what's going on, but I'm just setting those up so that you can see the distribution of cards. A couple of things that's a little bit strange for the trick-taking game. In order to set the game up, you deal out 12 cards to each player, and then the rest of the cards go off here to the side, and then each player has to choose 4 cards from their hand to make up Scotland Yard's hand. So it's going to be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde versus the Scotland Yard. And generally speaking, you're trying to get the Dr. Jekyll and Hyde figure here all the way to the exit without, in the standard game, without Scotland Yard catching up to you. If that's the case, then you've lost and you've got to retry that chapter over again. With that having been said, the deck of scenarios are broken up into chapters. So you start here with chapter 1, and then it flips over just like a book, and you have chapter 2, and then you have chapter 3, and chapter 4. So basically, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 are just going to teach you the basic rules for the game. And then, starting with chapter 5, that I'm not really going to get into because there are some differences and I don't want to spoil anything for you. Starting in chapter 5, there are some more little nuances and curveballs that the game will throw at you. But chapter 4's rules are going to be the standard rules for the game. As we said earlier, you have to choose which cards you're going to take from your 12 to build Scotland Yard's deck. The first thing you have to do, though, is that all of the 8s, each of these decks go from 1 to 8, but all of the 8s go into the Scotland Yard deck. If they're dealt to you, there could be 8s over here that simply just won't be in the round. And then any other cards up to 4 from each player, you get to choose what cards make up the Scotland Yard deck. Now, with that having been said, they're the ones that lead off every single round. Who plays after them is determined by this token right here, which is at the beginning of a chapter flipped randomly so that it lands on whatever side. And then for subsequent rounds, you simply just flip this token over to denote that the direction of play will change. But this one here basically means that Scotland Yard will start with an 8 blue. Now, the first color that comes up gets placed down here, and this is what helps determine the strength of the cards and the highest value of each suit. So right now, blue is the lowest suit, but 8 is the highest number in that suit. I would have to either follow suit with one of my blues, or I could play a potion card, and if I play a potion card, it's going to meld with this color to allow me to do a certain special thing, which basically blue allows us to rearrange the trump, or rather the suit tokens that are over here to make different suit more powerful than the others. But that doesn't really help me much right now, so I'm basically just going to play. I have to follow suit, so I'm going to go ahead and play that 5 right there. Over here, again, not really helping us that much, so they're just going to play off as well. Scotland Yard won this one, so we'll put that over here as one of their wins, and then they would lead off again. So now they have a gray or black, and that one's going to come up here, which means red is going to be our strongest suit in this particular round. So now there's a 4 out there. I could meld with the 4 if I wanted to, so I could play this 4+. That means I'm beating them, but this potion melds with that, which means that I can do this special power here, and that means that I or my partner can take the top card from the Scotland Yard deck and switch it with the card that's in my deck. So that isn't really helpful for me. Wow, super not helpful. So we'll go ahead and put this one right here, which means that that's going to be the next card that gets played. And now they have to follow suit, and they are going to go ahead and just play this one right here like that, which means that I won because Scotland Yard led with the 4. I played the potion, which was a 4+, which beats a 4, and then they just followed suit with a 2. Having a bobby hat in my hand, though, not good for us. Now I get to lead, and so maybe I don't want to win much right now, so I'm going to go ahead and lead with this one. They are going to follow, which means that maybe they'll play low as well, which is risky. But we know that 5 was there. So the 5 melds with the orange, which means that we get to take one of the hands that Scotland Yard has won. And we kind of do want it because having these 8s in our 1 decks is 1 tricks is very powerful. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll have my partner take that one though. And then this one comes over here because they played that 5+, which makes it a 5 orange. And they were the winners there. And so now we continue and so forth and so on. And now once we have finished the round, we would basically be able to move Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's pawn forward a number of spaces equal to the person who won the least amount of tricks, the player who won the least amount of tricks. So we would be able to move the Dr. Jekyll pawn forward 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, just like that. But if the players have 8s in their hands in the tricks that they won, so we've got 1 there, and we've got 1 here, and there weren't any in any of mine, so that's 2 more. 1, 2, just like that. But now what we're going to have to do is we have to move the bobby forward as well, and he's going to move forward a number of spaces equal to the bobby hats that are in the player's hands. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What? So that was the first round. Now, what we do on the second round is we have to play another hand using the exact same rules, but we have to try to get Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde to the exit point without having Scotland Yard overtake him. So the trick here is that if we move him 2 and we have to move him further and we can't, we have to move the Scotland Yard forward. But if we have any of these bobby hats in our hands at the end of the round, he still moves forward. But there's a number of different things in the game that you can do throughout, where you can get different kinds of achievements. You can do all of different kinds of how many times you attempt it, and so you can keep track of all that on the back of the rule book. But it's a really neat cooperative trick-taking game that has a whole lot of thought into it. Let's go ahead and get to my final thoughts. So that's about that for Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard. My final thoughts are quite simply this. It's a beautiful game, and it's a very challenging game. There used to be a time where I would have thought that 2-player trick-taking games are never going to happen. And 2-player cooperative trick-taking games were not even close, but here we are. There's a story element to it with the different chapters as you're going through. There is the cooperative nature of it. There's the aesthetic look of it. There's a lot of different things that makes this kind of rise above the rest of the crop there. So I do think that this is going to be a game that I keep in my collection for quite some time. But let's get to the nitty-gritty of why that's so. Well, my first pro of the game, you're not going to be surprised by this one, the artwork. Artwork is amazing, and it's very cool. Each of the different card suits has its own little flair to it. So you have the ruse card, you have the fear suit, and then you also have the manipulation suit. They all have their own little looks to them. But on top of that, the 8s in the game also have their own little card as well. Where are they? Come on. Each one of them have their own little thing here. So as you can see, I just like the artwork here. It's something that's really cool, and it's something that I really enjoy. Vintage Trade knocks it out of the park. Now, I will say this. Now we know what Hugh Jackman would look like as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So Hollywood, get on that. The board, even though it's just tracking the pawn's movement, is super aesthetic. And I mean, even so much down to the pommel of his cane has blood splatters all over it. I just think it's a very neat. There's a little cup of tea in one corner of it. It just looks great, and I love games that do that. So that's my first pro. Artwork. My second pro of the game, I already kind of mentioned it in my final thoughts section, or my intro to my final thoughts section, and that is the storyline element of the cards. Now, this is going to kind of bleed into my third pro, but stay with me here. The storytelling is really, really cool. Now, I'm not going to read past chapter 4, but check this out. Chapter 1 says, the full moon was shining and a thick fog was covering the city of London. Dr. Jekyll was in a hurry to get home. He had been maintaining balance with his evil double for several weeks. The new formula seemed to work, but the effects were already starting to wear off. Chapter 2. When Sir Danvers Carew stood in his way, when Sir Danvers Carew stood in his way, the balance was shattered, and Hyde got madly enraged. He savagely beat the poor man with his cane until wood and bone splintered beyond repair. From her window, Miss Butterworth saw the whole scene before she could cry for help. The man was already lying in his blood, his killer gone in the dark. As Miss Butterworth told him what she had seen, Inspector Newcomen immediately sensed that this case would make headlines. If he'd managed to solve the savage murder of the London dignitary, his appointment as head of Scotland Yard would only be a formality. Newcomen quickly found the remains of the cane near the body. The pommel, stained with blood, was engraved with the name of Henry Jekyll. He immediately set off for the good doctor's home to get an explanation. I don't know. That flair just adds to my enjoyment of a game like this. Is it a fun trick-taking game? Yes, it absolutely is. Is it a fun cooperative trick-taking game? Yes, it absolutely is. But this story element just adds to my enjoyment factor that much more. And of course, through chapters 10, you have the same thing. As you continue going through each of the different chapters, it carries that storyline through, and I really enjoy that aspect of the game. Now, I told you that kind of bled into my third pro of the game, and my third pro of the game is how it incrementally teaches you all of the different restraints and abilities that you can have within the course of the game, starting with chapter 1 all the way through chapter 4. It just adds, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4 adds a little bit to the game. And while it can be a little bit demoralizing as you're losing the game, as it's teaching you how to play, and you're like, it's only going to get harder, and you're like, well, I don't want it to get any harder. It does a great job at kind of easing you into the water, so to speak, and I thought that was a great little kind of a tutorial mechanism that isn't really a tutorial mechanism, because you're definitely playing along with the rules as they are in chapters 1, as they are in chapter 2 and 3 and 4. But then once you get to chapter 4, now you're playing the game the way the designers really designed it to be played. And I think that's a really cool way to teach people how the game without having them have to slog through a thick rule book. It just kind of teaches you everything as you move along, and I thought that was worthy of a pro. My final pro of the game is based more in the mechanisms, and this one is a couple of different things, but I'm going to throw them into the mechanisms as the pro. The first one is I like how the strength of the different suits fluctuates from round to round, and I also like that each of those potion cards, when melded with one of the different colors, gives you a special thing that you can do on your turn that can help you reach your goals, whether it be switching the strength of the suits around, or grabbing the top card of the Scotland Yard deck and switching it with one of the cards in your deck, or being able to take one of the tricks that Scotland Yard won. Those three capabilities keeps your goals in sight, if I can put it that way, because there are usually times throughout the round where you're going to be like, I don't think we're going to be able to win now. But if you use those potions at the very right time, that can help you get closer to that goal. Whether or not you actually reach or attain the goal and win the chapter is based on a number of different things, but at least it instills those abilities, instill hope throughout the course of the round. Now, on top of that, I loved how the pawns were moved. The things that you have to do in order to move those pawns along really keeps the game interesting. It's not who won the most tricks, but who won the least amount of tricks. That's how many spots you move forward. And if you have any of those 8s, the most powerful cards in your hands, then that will give you a +1, which is really cool, because in that first round you can go, all right, let's get as far as we can. Well, maybe you don't want to do that, because that means you really have to be careful in that second round. And that's another thing that I really enjoyed about that. Each chapter only gives you 2 rounds to go through, and I love that tension. I love it. Now, it's frustrating sometimes, and it makes it nigh impossible to win based on mistakes you made in the first round sometimes. But I love that tension that it adds to the game and made it really enjoyable. This leads me to my cons, and I only have one con. And the one con that I have is the card quality. We have played this, I would say, all together. I've played it with a couple. I've played it with JT, and I've played it with Jess, and we've probably played the game 10 times all around. You know, we haven't played all 10 chapters, but together we've played about 10 times altogether, and a lot of my cards are already showing some significant wear. Not unplayable, but they're showing some significant wear, so that's the only thing. They do have a nice linen finish. The cardstock isn't bad, I guess, but maybe it is because it's already showing a little bit of wear. So my con here is that the card quality should have been a little bit better, I think. But I think that's easily fixable with simply getting some card sleeves and putting it on that. And I usually don't sleeve my games, but I think this is one that I'm going to do that with. And specifically, I'm not talking about the chapter cards. I think the chapter cards are fine because generally speaking, you just set them on the table and they sit there. But the hand of cards that you're going to be using and shuffling and dealing out and all of that kind of stuff, I think you really need to put card sleeves on this one. And that's why it's a con, because I usually don't put card sleeves on on games, but I think it's necessary for this one. All in all, though, I'm going to give this one a rating of 8 out of 10. This could have easily been for trick-taking games. Now, I'm not usually a trick-taking person, so I'm kind of picky on the ones that I like to keep around and the ones that I don't. So this one with better cardstock could have probably been an 8.5 or a 9 because I do really enjoy the game that much. The artwork does a lot. For me specifically, because I really enjoy Vincent's artwork, but I also love the theme that's wrapped into it, the struggle between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde against Scotland Yard. I really enjoy that theme as well. So it's going to be an 8 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed it. I think you would definitely have a good time with it if you went and picked it up. But on the flip side, we always give thumbs up. I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up as well if you're over watching there. But it's 8 out of 10 here on the Dice Tower. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Take care.